This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hey basic bitches, welcome to the Faves of Our Lives. Grab a pumpkin spice latte, your flannel button-up, maybe a vest and boots. It's about to get spooky. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Brittany.
And today we're talking about Psycho.
Alright, Psycho was released June 19th, 1960 and directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The cast was Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, Vera Miles as Lila Crane, John Gavin as Sam Loomis, and Janet Leigh as Marion Crane. The plot of the movie is a Phoenix secretary embezzles $40,000 from her employer's client, goes on the run, and checks into a remote motel run by a young man under the domination of his mother. So, before we start, Kelly, tell me how you enjoyed watching this movie.
I actually really like this movie. I thought that I wasn't gonna like it because I know you haven't watched Bates Motel, the TV show, but I have, and I've seen there's a newer version of Psycho. It's not very new, but it's newer, and I've seen that, and I hadn't seen this one until today, and I actually really enjoyed it. I really like the music. It makes you feel like spooky, even when nothing scary has happened yet. Like while she's driving.
Yes. I was watching that part and I said out loud, this is giving me anxiety.
I know. It's like,
but in a
what's
good
gonna
way.
happen? Like,
Yeah.
I knew what was gonna happen because, I mean, most everyone knows the plot, even if they haven't watched it. And it's still creepy. Even if you know the plot, it's still creepy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not too scary. I mean, the shower scene, yes, is scary, but it's not really, like, jump scary or ghost scary or, I don't know, all the things that scare me.
It really is a psychological horror film. I feel like if you didn't know what was happening, it would affect you differently. So I can imagine in 1960... not knowing about the film, and the way that movies were shot back then, this was probably terrifying for,
yeah, I'm sure for its time it was very terrifying.
Right. It's kind of like The Exorcist. I remember asking multiple people around my mom's age what the scariest movie ever was, and they all said The Exorcist, but then I watched it and I was like, what?
That's what my mom will tell you, too.
Yeah.
That's the scariest movie she's ever seen. I personally have not watched it. I'm hoping that you're not going to make me watch it.
That was not one that was voted.
Okay. I mean, I'll take one for the team, but...
Right. The movie opens up not quite how you would imagine a horror film to start.
No, this is one of the things that Chad always says, because he lets someone watch scary movies, and I always say, are you sure there's no sex or inappropriate things? And he's like, no, that's only in old horror movies. The horror movies today don't need that. And I'm like, okay. But it's true.
Yeah, I can see what he's saying.
So, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. The film starts with Marion Crane and Sam Loomis. They are in a motel room or hotel room. I don't know the difference.
Hotel, motel, Holiday Inn.
It's like they're having an affair, and I guess in a sense they are, but neither of them is married. Sam is divorced, and he's paying alimony. He owns a hardware store, and he basically has no money to his name. And Marion has never been married. She works for a bank.
So why are they being so secretive?
Because they're not married.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So they're like hiding this love affair because they're not married. Marion tells him that she would marry him, but it's just a pride thing with Sam. He can't afford to give her the life that he thinks that she deserves. He even makes a comment about, oh yeah, you're gonna sleep with me in the back room at the hardware store. So obviously it's only because he is ashamed that he has no money. He said it's only going to take him a few years and his ex-wife will remarry. He won't have to pay alimony anymore and he'll get his debts in order. But she's wanting to marry him right now. And she just kind of gets fed up because he even asks her as she's leaving, well, we can't walk out together. And she says, no, I'm running late and you don't even have your shoes on.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Sam. She goes back to the bank. Her boss isn't back yet. He's out with a millionaire trying to secure a deal. And so she's able to sneak in without him realizing that she took a long lunch break. The billionaire comes in. He has $40,000 in cash that he's paying the bank for a house for his daughter's wedding. And he's flirting with Marion a lot in this scene. She looks...
Yeah, he definitely is.
In this scene, though, I said that Janet Leigh had the perfect eyes for a black and white film because they just, like, the whites of her eyes shine.
Yeah, they really do. And, okay, why is all these women, their makeup is perfect, and their hair is perfect? Like, today we have way more technology and, like, beauty supplies. I couldn't look like that if I tried.
No way. I know. Yeah, I mean, every woman in this film, her hair is spot on.
Even after she takes a nap in the car, she wakes up and every single hair is in place. Her makeup hasn't moved. She hasn't drooled on herself. Like, what's going on?
The only complaint I have about any of the cosmetic accessories in this film is the pointed bras.
Yeah.
That was a little too much.
Yeah, but wasn't that, like, the style?
Oh, yeah. I just talk about unrealistic images for women. So, he hands Marion the $40,000. Her boss feels really uncomfortable about it, and he tells her, I don't feel comfortable with that amount of cash in the office. It was a Friday afternoon, so he told her to go put it in the bank and just come back Monday morning, because she also tells him that she isn't feeling very well. She has a headache or something.
I don't understand why they would just let her take that money in her little tiny-ass purse and put it in the bank without a companion of any sort.
Yeah, and I don't know because I don't know how things worked back then, but it does seem pretty fishy. Although that being said, like, I know that my mom, where she works, she deals with a lot of money, and she puts it in a bank bag and takes it to the bank and deposits it on her lunch break, so...
Okay, but an envelope in your purse?
Well, yeah. I don't know. I agree it seems weird, but again, times have changed since the 60s. And he even says later on, like, when she's driving and you can hear the voiceovers, he says, you know, she worked for me for 10 years and never gave me any reason not to trust her. But she takes the money and she goes home instead of going to the bank because she's going to try to run with this $40,000. And it's never specifically stated, but I'm fairly certain that her idea was to go to Sam, help him pay off his debts, and they could get married. It's a very flawed logic, but that's where her mind is because she just left the hotel room with him. She is in her house, apartment, whatever, and she's packing her bags, and you see her look at the money. She shoves it back in her purse, takes her suitcase, gets in the car, and she just drives off. The only part of this movie that really, really confuses me is while she's sitting at a light, her boss walks in front of the crosswalk, turns, and looks at her, and you can see that he recognizes her, but...
Yeah.
Like, why is he not suspicious right then? She said that she was sick and she was going home to sleep.
Yeah, but she hadn't done anything wrong, really, that he knows of at that point. I mean, yeah, she wasn't at home in bed, but he doesn't know that she didn't put the money in the bank.
That's true. Maybe he just thought, well, she just didn't want to finish out her day after she left the office, so... But I still, like, if someone was leaving the office with $40,000, they said they were going home after they had a headache, and then you see them out gallivanting, I'd be like, what is happening here? Marion makes a run for it, and she's driving towards where Sam is. I can't remember where that is at the moment. But she doesn't make it through the night, so she pulls the car over, and she goes to sleep. She wakes up to an officer knocking on her window, which is the last thing you want to see when you've just stolen $40,000 and went on the run.
Yep.
So she basically tells him she's really sorry. She laid down to close her eyes. She didn't mean to sleep that long. And he lets her go, but he follows her for quite a while. And this is where there was that high anxiety music. That wasn't the worst part, but it was, like, it puts you on edge. They did very well with the music in this movie.
Yeah, they did.
So, the cop ends up taking an exit. That is not the exit that Marion takes. She breathes a sigh of relief, but she decides that the best way to kind of skirt around this mishap is just to stop and buy a brand new car. So she goes to a car dealership, and the exchange makes me laugh, only because she basically tells the guy, I want to trade my car in and take another car off of the lot. I don't care what car, any car, I don't want this car anymore. He takes it as she doesn't want to, or she can't stand the sight of her old car or something, and he's like, yeah, $700 cash in your car, and a new car is all yours, which is nothing to her. She has $40,000.
That seemed pretty cheap, but I know back in that time it probably was not.
Right, I thought that too. It was like $700?
That's a deal.
Yeah. As she's making this deal, the cop that knocked on her window has found her and is watching her do this transaction with this guy. And what I don't understand is before she finalizes this deal, she sees the cop. What I don't understand is it's also a garage. Why didn't she just tell the guy, you know what, I changed my mind. Just do a checkup on my car, and I'm gonna run to the bathroom. And then, when she comes back out, talk to the cop and tell him, you know, well, I was just afraid that something was wrong with my car, so I stopped to have it checked out. Because the whole point of buying a car, it's ruined now. He watches her drive out in this new car with these new plates, so he knows.
Plus, she's looking real suspicious not doing a test drive.
I agree with that.
I mean, at least do it for show.
Yeah. Because, like I said, the cop's there. He already sees you.
I know.
That being said, this part of the movie also, I mean, I get why it's there. It's supposed to make you even more anxious she's about to get caught. But really, that's the only point of this happening, because you never see the cop again.
Yeah.
Like, I expected this to be an ongoing thing, but I don't know. Maybe that's the point of it, because, like, I watched this movie with Mary, and she said, you know, this really feels like a movie that's two different movies. Because it starts out as one thing and turns into something completely different. She takes the car and she drives off. And as she's driving, it starts pouring down rain in the middle of the night. And this is the music that, it got to the point that I was like, I can't wait for this scene to be over.
Okay, and what they show her seeing is literally how I feel when I am driving at night in the rain. What is it about that makes you not be able to see anything?
I have
even
no
if
idea.
You have good wipers.
Yes. And I think that was another reason why I was like, this scene needs to be over. That was giving me anxiety. The music was giving me anxiety. And I was just ready for it to be over. So she sees a motel with a vacancy sign. This is the infamous Bates Motel. She pulls in, nobody's at the office, so she honks her car horn, and this is where we first see Norman Bates. And he runs down from the house. His house is right by the motel. And he comes down, and he lets her in, and he's helping her get checked in and everything. She signs the guest book as Marie Samuels. So she's using an alias because, you know, she's on the lam. He decides that he's going to give her cabin 1 because it's closest to the lobby. What's that called?
Office.
Yeah, the front office and the parlor is what I was thinking. He has the parlor in the back.
Oh.
Anyway, the reason for this is because there are 12 cabins and they're all available because the highway that used to run by the motel, it was moved. So they don't have the guests that they used to have. It's going downhill. I will say, I'm really sad that this guy is a freak because he's adorable.
Yeah, and if you watch the TV show, Bates Motel, the actor that plays Norman on that show, he must have studied this movie because he talks exactly like this guy
That's
talks.
awesome. I'm gonna have to watch it.
And I'm pretty sure that in real life he has a British accent, so that's really good.
Yeah.
It's the same kid from Willy Wonka.
Yeah, I
Charlie-
knew I recognized him.
The newer one, I believe. Yeah.
So yeah, he's putting her in cabin 1, and he helps her in with her bags and everything. He says to her, I was about to make some sandwiches and milk. I was hoping that you would join me. And she agrees. He goes up to the house to make this dinner, and you hear he and his mother arguing. She's basically calling her a slut because, she's never even seen her, which, I mean, technically she has, but we find that out later. And is basically saying that she's just trying to get Norman into bed. She's not having it. He tells her to shut up, and he comes down to the motel with these sandwiches and milk. Marion is hearing all of this. She hears it through her window. She meets Norman at her motel room door, and she swings the door open for him. He steps forward like he's going to go in, and he hesitates, and he backs out, and he says, why don't we eat this in the parlor? So obviously, he's got some type of mental turmoil about going into the room with her. They go back to the parlor. It's just full of stuffed birds.
I have a question about this.
Mm-hmm.
Is this movie before or after The Birds?
I think that it's after.
So is that kind of like a Alfred Hitchcock, tie-in to The Birds, or...
Oh, no, Psycho was before The Birds.
So maybe it was foreshadowing.
It might have been, but here was my thought. He makes the comment about, how Marion eats like a bird.
Mm-hmm.
He also is talking about how he stuffs birds. He's got this whole dialogue about birds. And Marion's name is Marion Crane.
Oh.
So I wonder if it's not foreshadowing to what's about to happen to her, just by the name.
Yeah. It's a good one.
My mind did go to The Birds, but I thought it was before this movie.
You know how sometimes, though, in Disney movies, they, an upcoming movie will be, an Easter egg in a movie that they already did?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I don't know if we are supposed to assume that his argument with his mother ruined his appetite, but for someone who was about to eat and asked her to join him for dinner, Norman doesn't eat anything.
Yeah, and he said, all of this is for you.
Right.
That's weird.
So they get into a conversation about his mother because Marion tells him, I overheard the conversation. It seems like I got you into a lot of trouble. And so he just says, there's nothing wrong with my mom. She just goes mad every once in a while. We all go a little mad sometimes. She basically brings up, well, why don't you put her in a home? This is where you see something change in Norman. Because he says, I'm not putting her in an institution. Do you know what happens in those places? Which, I have not watched the show, but I'm going to assume that he gets put into an institution. Because you can see in his eyes that he's been there.
I want to say he has a therapist, maybe, but I don't think he ever gets put into an institution.
I just feel like that is something that this movie is trying to tell you through his reaction. Because he says to her, have you ever been in one of those places?
Yeah, he really doesn't like it.
No. As quickly as it comes, the anger kind of subsides. And he says, I'm not gonna lie and say that I haven't thought about it myself. The conversation ends fairly quickly because Marion just says, I got a long drive in the morning. I really need to get some sleep. So Norman lets her go. She goes into her room. She's getting ready to shower. So she's taking off her clothes. And this is where you see Norman take the picture off of the wall in the parlor. There's a hole in the wall to where he can see Marion getting ready to get in the shower. And maybe it's because I've seen this movie, but I don't know how someone can not notice a hole in the wall.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it was on his side, it was a big hole, but on the other side, it was a tiny hole. But still, I don't know.
I wouldn't call it tiny. It was like an eye-sized hole.
An eye-sized hole. Eye hole. New from Apple.
If he put his eye up to it, it looked like it was the size of his eye.
Like a pupil size or
like
a whole
his
eyeball?
entire eye. She gets into the shower, and she's... the best way I can explain it is she's enjoying her shower. She just looks calm. She's letting the water flow over her, and you see a shadow through the shower curtain. And it's an old woman. The hand comes up with a knife in it, and the woman just starts stabbing her through the shower curtain. This is where you have the famous Psycho music. I'm not going to subject you to that noise through the microphone, me trying to imitate that.
I was gonna try to find a sound effect for it, but I didn't have time.
Yes, so Marion gets stabbed to death.
And the cheesiest stabbing scene ever.
Yeah. But it's kind of... I liked it, because you don't see anything. It's all in your imagination.
Okay, but that's so unrealistic. It's like, you never see the knife touch her skin, and then all of a sudden there's blood.
Right. It also is unrealistic because when she slides down the pearly white tile in the shower, there's nothing on that tile. The only time you ever see blood is when it's going down the drain. Well, and when he's mopping it up.
It is really creepy because it's in black and white, and I assume that red would be black and white, but it is like black. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which
we'll get to that.
Is creepy. Oh, okay.
But I'm really glad you didn't read any of the random facts.
Yeah, I think I read some of the ones for our other episode, but not for this one. And I probably forgot them already anyway, so it's fine.
Marion falls forward out of the tub because she reaches for the shower curtain to get up. Shower curtain falls out. She bleeds out and she dies. Janet should have gotten paid a lot of money just for being able to keep her eye as still as she did for that close-up shot.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't move at all. The only complaint I have is when they zoom out, you can see her throat moving, but there's no way around that. She's gotta breathe. You hear Norman screaming about his mom and how there's blood on a knife, and he comes running down from the house, runs into the cabin, sees Marion on the floor. He just, steps out of the room and clasps his hand over his mouth. You can see he's in despair. He just decides, my mother did this, and I need to get rid of the body. So he takes the shower curtain and he lays it out in the bed chamber part of the motel room, and puts Marion's body on it, rolls it up, takes everything that she owns out of the motel room, and throws it into the trunk of her car, including the $40,000 that Marion was actually planning on giving back. Because right before she gets into the shower, you can see her calculating how much money she's used and how much money she's going to have to pay back. Because when she tells Norman she's got a long drive, she tells him that she's going back to Phoenix. So this whole ordeal is really sad because she steals the money to go to Sam to start life over, and then she comes to and decides she's going to go back to her old life. She probably would have gotten a slap on the wrist because she is returning the money, and old girl kills her.
Old girl?
Norman drives the car to... Is it a swamp?
I don't know. It looks like a...
It looks like a big mud puddle.
Yeah, a sinkhole.
Yes, something.
Not a sinkhole. Quicksand.
Yeah, because when the car
sinks,
it doesn't sink like it's water.
No, it's very goopy.
Yeah, so
looking.
I'm not sure what it's supposed to be.
I think it's the river from Willy Wonka.
We're just keep talking about Willy Wonka. But he pushes the car out, and I will admit I laughed out loud when the car stopped, and I thought, oh my god, please let this actually happen. You can imagine someone pushing a car in to get rid of it, and it getting, halfway down, and then just stopping. What do you do then?
Yeah. Can I tell you something funny from the TV show?
Yes.
You actually see Norma, who is the mom on the TV show, and they end up... I'm not sure which one of them. It might be the mom, actually, kills this person, and they cut him up and roll him up in carpet, and I think they put him in a car and push the car into the river or something, or lake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's not the ocean, but a body of water. And this police officer finds a hand, like, floating, washing ashore or whatever. And Norman is, like, freaking out about it. And the mom, Norma, is like, Norman, it could have been anybody's hand. It could have been any hand. Like, there's just all these hands in the water or something. And I just thought that was so funny. Because she's not even concerned. Yeah. She's just like, it could be any hand.
It's any hand at all. That is funny. Yeah, so the car actually, it does sink eventually. He goes back to the motel like nothing happened. Some time passes. Marion doesn't show back up to work. There's the voiceovers of what happened and everything, or what they are saying could have happened. And this is where you cut to Sam. He's writing on, something with a letterhead that says Sam Loomis Hardware, so he's in his hardware shop. This woman comes in, and it is Marion's sister, Lila. And I felt like this was really good casting, because at first I thought it was Marion.
Yeah, they do look similar.
Yeah, from far away, and because she's dressed very similar, she has her hair sort of in the same way.
Yeah, her blouse is very similar too. Yeah. The buttons all the way up.
She's basically asking Sam, where is she? Because she's assuming that she took the $40,000 and she's coming to Sam, which is what the original plan was. But Sam is so confused. He doesn't understand what they are talking about. He was actually, I think he was writing a letter to Marion when Lila came in.
Yeah, he was.
She isn't getting any answers from him, obviously, because he doesn't know what she's talking about. And as she's asking him all of these questions, a detective comes in, or a private investigator, who's trying to track down the $40,000. He's not necessarily a cop. He's asking both of them questions, and he finds out pretty quickly that neither of them know anything. He goes out and he begins questioning people, and he finds the Bates Motel. He comes in and he's talking to Norman, and Norman does not play it off very well. He's extremely nervous from the get-go. The guy is asking him, have you seen this woman? He says, we haven't had any guests at all within the past few weeks, so I know that nobody stopped here. The guy continues asking questions. He's like, look at the picture, just tell me. He looks and he says, no, that's not her. After asking a few more questions, Norman slips up and he says, just last week I had some guests comment on, I think it was the linens. And the private investigator said, see, now you just told me you haven't had clients in here for a few weeks, and now you're telling me that you had some people in here last week, so are you sure that you didn't see this woman? And he still says no. He takes the book out, the log book, and the guy sees Marie Samuels. And immediately, he has something with her handwriting on it. He matches the handwriting. He knows her name is Marion Crane. She has a boyfriend named Sam, so that obviously is her. All of a sudden, Norman remembers he did see her. It was just really raining that night. It wasn't a very good picture of her, is what he tells the private investigator. He tells the whole story about how they ate sandwiches back in the parlor. She said that she had a long drive ahead of her the next day. She went into the room, and she went right to sleep. And he said, did you go into her room? And he said, no, I would never. And he said, well, then how did you know she went right to sleep? And he said, well, she was very tired. You can just tell, he's fallen over his words. He also mentions that his mother saw her. And so the private investigator wants to talk to his mom, and he's very adamant, no, she's ill, she's invalid, you cannot go and talk to her. So the guy says he's leaving. He calls Lila and Sam and tells them, I know that something's going on with this old woman. I'm going to go investigate. So he goes back to the motel. Norman is putting the sheets on the bed. He sees Norman hesitate at cabin 1, so he immediately puts in his head that Marion was in cabin 1. This was before he called, so he told Lila and Sam this. He goes back, goes into the house to talk to the mom. He's walking up the steps. When he gets to the top of the steps, you see the mother come out and stab him. He falls down the stairs, is what I'm assuming we're supposed to imagine happened, because that was the worst camera play for falling downstairs. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I mean, they probably did the best they could.
Yeah, just by today's standards, like, I don't know, they must not have had any stuntmen back then.
Yeah.
It's just a few rolls down the stairs. So Norman has another car that he has to get rid of. We watch that happen. After about 3 hours pass, Lila and Sam realize that this guy's not coming back. Either something happened to him, or he got a lead from the mother about where the $40,000 is, and he's following the cash, so he knows where Marion is. They get the bright idea. They're going to go to the Bates Motel, and they're going to act like a married couple to get any kind of information. They go, and Norman seems very suspicious right away. But I think that it's because there was just a private investigator there.
And this is more business than they've had in a long time.
Right. There's this whole back and forth. You can see Sam is he's making a power play, because he says that he's going to San Francisco on business. He's not checking any bags, which immediately is suspicious. Like, you're going to San Francisco, but you don't have any clothes or anything like that, because I don't know exactly where they are, but Marion was in Phoenix, so it's not like it's, you know, they're not in Los Angeles or anything. He basically says, I don't have any bags and you're not asking for money up front. So then Norman asks for money up front. And there's just this whole back and forth. They get placed in cabin 10, but they know that Marion was in cabin 1, so they're wanting to investigate in that cabin. They eventually wait for Norman to be away, and they go into cabin 1 and they find the ledger where Marion was calculating how to pay back the $40,000. She had torn it up and went to flush it, but not all of it flushed, so they could see that she was, you know, basically the slip of paper said $40,000, so that confirmed that she was in that room. I can't remember what the next goal was. I think that Lila said she wanted to go up to the house to speak to the mother, and Sam said that he would distract Norman. Is that right?
Yeah.
So Sam goes to the office and is having a conversation with Norman. Lila goes up to the house. This is very brave of her. I would be scared to death.
Yeah, I would too.
She goes into the house and she's looking around, and she doesn't end up really seeing too much other than it's a beautiful house.
Yeah.
She hears something. It's Norman, and she runs down some steps. And when she runs down the steps, Norman goes upstairs. So she's about to run out the front door, and then she realizes, oh, these steps lead to something.
Let's check it out.
So she goes down to the cellar, which any cellar is scary.
Yeah.
She sees Mrs. Bates sitting with her back to the door. So she says her name a couple of times with no response. She turns the chair around, and you just see a corpse. Like, no eyes, a skeletal face, just hair is the only thing left on this corpse.
Now, would that be a wig or what? Because it's basically a skeleton, so would the hair still be attached?
I mean, they say that your hair and your fingernails continue to grow after death.
Ew.
So I'm assuming that it's her hair, and he's just taking care of it.
Well, that's weird.
I don't quite... Like, I could kind of see it if it was a corpse that was in the ground and it wasn't being moved, but wouldn't you... I would imagine that if you're combing the hair of a corpse, the skin would, like, swath off.
Ugh.
I mean, I'm just saying. Anyway, she's dead. And
she's real dead.
Lila screams in, like, that classic horror, or like old-time horror scream. It's very over-the-top dramatic, and the cellar door swings open, and in comes Norman in one of his mother's dresses with a wig on, and he's got the knife in his hand getting ready to stab Lila. Sam bursts in, takes the knife, and this was the big reveal. His mother was dead the whole time. He killed his mother and his mother's new husband. He had so much guilt about the fact that he killed his mother that he stole her corpse and continued to take care of her as if she was still alive. And when that wasn't enough, he began to speak for her, have conversations with himself as her, and it developed into basically split personality, to where the dominant personality, who was the mother, would take over every so often, and Norman would just black out. I'm pretty sure the psychiatrist says that at times he was both Norman and the mother, but there was never a time when he was only Norman. There were times that he was only the mother.
That's weird.
What he tells Sam and Lila is that Norman no longer exists. The mother personality has won, and that's who the psychiatrist has been speaking with. So we go to the padded room, for lack of a better term. You see Norman sitting with a blanket over him. You get this internal monologue from the mother. She's saying how she knows that she's going to get the blame for Norman killing all of these women and how absurd it is, and how she's going to show them just how innocent she is. And there's a fly crawling on his hand, and she says, "Look at that fly. I'm not even going to swat it, so that when they speak of me, they'll say, she couldn't have killed those women. Why, she wouldn't even hurt a fly."
Ew, that's creepy.
Norman looks up. He has this evil smirk on his face, and it fades out, and when it fades out, you can see the mother's corpse in his face.
Ew.
So, this is truly the mother, and that's the end of Psycho.
On Is It Philosophy, we are not going to explore the philosophers of times long forgotten. We're not going to ponder Plato or Socrates. There's so many podcasts out there for that, if that's what you're seeking. This is something different. A place where all ideas are welcome. An open forum to talk about anything and everything. We take an idea and work to find an answer. It may not be the most insightful. Hell, it may not even be an answer at all. So come and listen with an open mind. Who knows, you may like what we have to say. If not, at least we've given you something to think about. So come and enjoy and ask yourself, is it philosophy?
Let's move on to the random facts. I got these random facts from Mental Floss and tonsofacts.com. I always like to let you know where I get these from. Alfred Hitchcock makes a cameo in this movie. He is the gentleman standing outside the office building and a little over 6 minutes into the film. He's got a cowboy hat on. I don't know if you noticed him or not.
No, I didn't.
I think he always makes cameos in his movies.
You know who else does that?
Stan Lee.
And, M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, yeah, you're right, he does. It is the first American film to feature a toilet.
That's funny.
Yes.
Why? Why would they not? Everybody uses the toilet.
I know. It says Psycho is the first American film to show a toilet on screen. It's also the first American film in which we hear a toilet being flushed. That's just how repressed Americans were in the 1950s. Because the release date was 1960, but it was shot in the 50s. Its score is all strings. Despite Hitchcock's early intention to use jazz, Bernard Herrmann's immortal Psycho score contains only stringed instruments. And I think that's what makes it so creepy. Hitchcock financed the film. Paramount had all sorts of cold feet regarding the project, which prompted Hitchcock to both pay for the film out of his own pocket. What is wrong with me?
Are you drinking?
Yes, always. And forgo his rather substantial director's fee in exchange for 60% ownership of the film. This highly uncommon arrangement put a whole lot of money in Hitchcock's pocket. Bad move, Paramount. Plus, the film doesn't even belong to Paramount anymore. It's been a Universal title since 1968.
Well, I guess they messed up.
Yeah. There are 3 Norma Bates. No less than 3 actresses recorded Norma Bates' dialogue. Their recordings were then mixed together until Hitchcock found the right tone of voice for each particular scene. They did good because it sounded like the same woman.
Yeah.
Visible holiday decor led to a December setting. The only reason that the film opens up and says December 11th was because some of the shots had Christmas decorations in the background.
So we could have done this for our Christmas.
We could have. It's technically a Christmas movie. So, you're gonna hate this, because the ending was spoiled months before the film's release.
Ugh.
Despite Hitchcock's fervent and admirable attempts at keeping the project a secret, both Variety and The Hollywood Reporter published very thorough spoilers regarding the Psycho plot months before the film actually came out.
That's just rude.
Yeah. The only good thing is that back then, news didn't spread as quickly as it does now, so I'm sure there were still plenty of people who didn't read that.
Yeah, because there was no social media.
Right. Hitchcock wouldn't let the film be screened before its premiere because he didn't want the plot spoiled, so he didn't want a bunch of critics basically going out and writing reviews.
So then how did it get spoiled?
They must have somehow snuck on and at least got enough of it that they knew what was
Probably
happening.
the Russians.
Probably. Late moviegoers weren't allowed into the theater. Not only was Hitchcock intent on keeping the film under wraps until the last possible minute, he also instructed theaters to not allow anyone into the film once it had started, and they listened.
I would probably miss 90% of the movies that I go to.
It was Hitchcock's most successful film.
Really?
Yep.
I thought The Birds.
At least financially speaking. It made $32 million at the North American box office during its first theatrical release, off of a production budget approximately of $807,000. So he put less money probably into this movie than he did The Birds. Hitchcock's next biggest hits were Rear Window, which grossed about $27.5 million in 1954, and Notorious, which made approximately $24.5 million in 1946. The movie earned Hitchcock his final Oscar nomination because Alfred Hitchcock never won an Oscar for Best Director. He was only ever nominated.
What?
Yep.
That's crazy.
It says the Academy gave him the Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award in 1968, but he never won an Oscar for directing.
Poor guy.
Alfred Hitchcock was so happy with the score of the movie that he doubled the composer's salary to $34,501. And he later said 33% of the effect of Psycho was due to the music.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Because that was the first thing I said.
On set, Alfred Hitchcock would always refer to Anthony Perkins as Master Bates.
That's hilarious.
The official trailer for the movie back in 1960 ran for over 6 minutes and 30 seconds, a feat unheard of in today's trailers. And the last one, Alfred's Psycho, was the last feature film in black and white.
Wow.
And Hitchcock used Hershey's syrup instead of blood because it showed up better on camera.
Gosh. Now I know why it was black.
Yep. That's all I got for you.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny that I noticed that.
Yeah. That's why it looked black, because it was. Or at least dark brown.
Yeah. Okay, we have one comment. Carol Phillips says, "My favorite scene of Psycho is the end when you see his mom's dead body."
I think that I have to agree. I mean, I like the shower scene, and that is the most iconic part of the movie. I mean, people who haven't even seen the movie know the shower scene.
And the sound effects.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that is the turning point of the movie when you see that his mom has been dead the whole time. And I know that you technically know that because the sheriff says something about his mom being dead.
Yeah, and then that one woman says, "I helped him pick out the dress that she was buried in."
Right. But all that we know is that someone's killing these women, and all that you have to go on is you've seen the silhouette of a woman in the window, and you've seen the shadow of a woman stabbing Marion, and you see a woman come out of a bedroom to stab the investigator. I
Yeah.
feel like people didn't automatically jump to, in the 1960s, oh, this dude's dressing up as his mom.
Yeah.
So I can see where that's a big reveal.
You have to watch the TV show.
I'm going to. I was told that while we were watching the movie, so I will do that.
Oh, by who?
Mary.
Does she watch it?
Yeah, she's seen all but the last season.
Well, why isn't she here?
She doesn't want to be famous, Kelly.
I know. What is wrong with our spouses?
I don't know. So yeah, that was Psycho. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will be back next week with Halloween, one of my favorites. Alright, so we'll see you then.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
To interact with us and have your responses read on the show, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at the Faves of Our L1, and join us on Patreon for bonus content and special merchandise at patreon.com/thefavesofoural1. That's the Faves of Our L and the number 1. You can also email us at thefavesofOurLives@gmail.com.